A few of you guys asked what this thing was up on my shelf, so I thought I'd show you. It's a gnarly tree Rex from Skylanders Giants. He's a differently colored figure from the normal one. He's a special edition kind of thing, so I got him to play Giants with my girlfriend. Roll initiative. Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I'm your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here in front of a shelf full of gaming stuff and a couple of D&D books and tell you the many, many tales of me and my friends sitting around the tabletop playing the popular role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. But that intro doesn't really seem to fit anymore, does it? I haven't told an actual D&D story in a long time, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys the show is going to evolve very soon. We're approaching the 50th episode, and things are going to change a little bit around here because I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to D&D stories. So the show's going to shift a little, but we're still going to keep RPGs as the forefront. So keep an eye out for the next couple episodes on things that are going to be changing. Now, story of the day today comes from OVA, or Open Versatile Anime. Now, it's basically a role-playing game that focuses more on story and outrageous anime-like abilities than it does on stats or character sheets. So, you know, you've seen me do OVA 101 and you've seen me tell a couple of other OVA stories. This is one that happened a while back that basically got me into OVA. It was my first OVA game. So of course I wasn't DMing, I was actually a player. And this happened right after the Seven Plans game, where the campaign basically crashed and burned because the players were a little too clever for me. So I was still feeling kind of sore, but I didn't want to be left out, you know, because, you know, my group was moving on to different games and I was going to be there with them because, you know, who wants to sit at home and do nothing? So I show up there and the DM, her name was Hannah. Hannah shows me how OVA works, that it's set on the scale of 1 to 5, and this is how you make a character sheet. And, it, you know, I looked through the little book and, you know, oh, this is really simple, and, you know, this is how this works, and X, Y, and Z, and we made a character out of Lord Tiberius Tygar in the OVA setting. So, since it was going to be set in a modern setting, you know, since OVA covers sci-fi, OVA covers fantasy, it covers mecha, it covers absolutely everything. It's versatile anime. He said, just put it in a modern setting and give yourself whatever powers you think are appropriate for Tiberius Tygar. So what I did was I built a businessman with filthy rich 5, basically, that he's just one of the richest men in the world. And I think I can look up his stats and paste them up here for you. If I find them, I'll paste over myself for a few seconds and you'll be able to see his OVA stats. So I made Lord Tiberius Tygar, and I had his son Bino there with him, going on a business trip for the setting of this campaign. And the setup was that all of these characters, there were like 4, 5, 6 of us, all of these characters were staying at the same fancy hotel / bed and breakfast. It was hard to describe because it's set in Japan, and I don't know if the Japanese have bed and breakfasts. But at the same time, it was a hotel as well, so it was like you would share your meals together with the other guests, but it was also like really expensive, and it was still like in the city, so you couldn't really go anywhere in the city because you would go off the range of the campaign. But that was accounted for anyway. So Lord Tiberius Tygar and his son Bino show up at this fancy bed and breakfast / hotel place. And the game is set up to where your abilities can can compensate for pretty much anything. So, you know, if there's an arcade machine in the corner and you just so happen to have talent or a special ability in gaming, games, or gambling, then you can play that game really well. And Bino ran over, when they got into the lobby, Bino ran over to play a crane game, and he didn't really get anything out of it, but that's beside the point. So we show up, and there's already several other guests there, and, you know, we get to meet, you know, a couple of the maids who are really cute, obviously, and we meet I think 3 maids, a grouchy one, a shy one, and one that's off doing her own thing most of the time. We meet the hotel owner, and we all get set in for dinner so we can introduce our characters. Obviously, this is mostly a storytelling-based game. So it's Lord Tiberius Tygar, his 10-year-old son, Bino, and then we get into the other characters of the campaign, which kind of blew me away for how unusual they all were, because, you know, it's an anime-based game, so you can get away with it. We had one guy who was playing 3 people. Basically a trio of high school gangsters. If you've ever seen any anime under the sun, you always see those guys that have their things open, like resting all wrinkly on themselves, and they've always got their hands in their pockets and they're hunching like they're vultures all the time. We had, you know, the boss and the 2 minions were there staying at the hotel. We had a mad scientist. I remember because his name was Norman Gage. Now, I'm going to give you about 4 seconds to get the joke there, because only a few of you will. Norman Gage, if you shorten his name, becomes N-Gage. Now, what is an N-Gage? An N-Gage is basically a back before phones had video games on them and applications and all kinds of craziness that they have on them nowadays, somebody tried to make basically a Game Boy it was about the size of the Game Boy Advance, you know, that big honkin' thing that played color games, and it was so cool and stuff. At the time, it was really awesome. And if you turned it on its side, it became a telephone. Now, I don't remember what company it was associated with, or if it was associated with any company at all, but it was so awkward, because if you can imagine having like a Game Boy Advance and you turn it on its side and holding it up to the side of your head, it was basically like a taco. So people on the internet shat all over this thing because, you know, there were no primary companies backing it up. This was not a Nintendo product. This was not a Sony product, I don't think. So it was, you know, from the get-go, it was destined to fail because there was nobody backing it. And there weren't any good games on it that I had ever heard about. So, you know, people on forums called it the taco phone. There were even forums where that was a way to insult people, was to say, you know, oh, looks like so-and-so just bought an N-Gage, and that was just a way of calling them stupid, you know. It became a meme and unto itself that, you know, so-and-so just bought an N-Gage. So, anyway, getting back to it, he was basically a mad scientist. He took the invention skill and the invention focus skill, so he could basically reach into his magic science bag and pull out an invention for whatever purpose he needed to. So I envisioned him as Dr. Insano, just because he... Sorry, Noah. Just because he had just all this random crap he could pull out of his bag and say, I invented this with science! But, so yeah, Tiberius Bino, Professor Norman Gage, the high schoolers, and then we had a pair of dragons, like small, like up to your chest style dragons. Remember the guy I told you who enjoyed Pokemon a little too much? Yeah, he was there as Reshiram again. And then we had another dragon who was more interested in like stealing things and eating children, so I had to watch Bino extra close. Why these 2 dragons were at a hotel, I don't know. Why the 3 high school gangsters chose to stay in one of the fanciest hotels in the city, I don't know. It was just their characters, you know, and we threw them all into the same setting. So if you can imagine a dinner table like that, just it sounds like the start of a joke, you know. A tiger-headed man, a mad scientist, 3 high school gangsters, and 2 dragons sit at a dinner table. You know, it's like these guys walked into a bar and then... So we introduce ourselves. We find out a little bit about each other. This is, you know, a very wide group of skills. So, you know, we share dinner together. We've all got our own stuff going on. Tiberius is there for a business conquest in this particular city because he's one of the richest men in the world. You know, Norman Gage is there doing his own science stuff, and you know the high school gangsters are interested in the claw machine that's in the lobby. Who knows what the dragons are up to? I have no idea, and frankly, neither of the 2 guys playing those characters are very much into role play, so, you know, didn't really matter why they were there, I guess. So, being a hotel, obviously, after dinner, we all retire to our own respective rooms that evening. And it's the middle... No, not the middle of the night. It's the next morning. We wake up to the shrillest screaming, like, just, I can't even put it to words, the shrillest female cop you've ever seen running down the hallway, shouting for everybody to get up and get out of their beds, and this was a very enthusiastic DM, so she was literally screaming in our faces. For our characters to get out of bed and to, like, report to the front of our rooms, in front of our doors, and she makes us file out of our rooms and straight back to the dining room where we were, where we find out that the hotel owner has been murdered. And you know, obviously all the guests and all the staff are suspect because, you know, did this guy have any enemies? Did any of the guests have it out for him, etc., etc. And we all immediately get, you know, shouted into the floor by this woman because she's, you know, I don't remember if she was like a new cop or just an overly enthusiastic cop, but we basically get screamed at, and we are not allowed to leave the hotel until we find out who the murderer was. And then just then, who should rush onto the police scene but one of the maids, I think the shy maid's brother shows up, and he's like a super famous motorcyclist who does like stunts and stuff in stadiums, like jumps through flaming hoops and does things like that. And, you know, Bino, being the youngest child who has a serious weakness of hero worship, immediately wanders up to him and wants an autograph, and it's like the most adorable thing you've ever seen because he's like 10, I think, 10 or 11. And of course, you know, the guy signs his autograph just in time to practically get tackled by the police officer lady and a couple of her cronies because he's just burst in on a crime scene, worried about his sister. And he's like, you know, I knew this whole thing was gonna go bad. And we're like, what whole thing? It's like, you know, fraternizing with your boss. You know, I forget her name. I'm gonna call her Mary. Mary, fraternizing with your boss. I knew it was gonna be bad. I knew something was gonna go wrong, and now he's dead. You know, rah 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 rah. I knew he was bad for you. You know, basically painting himself as the suspect at the very start because he didn't approve of Mary, the maid, fraternizing with her boss, the hotel owner. But then we start finding out a lot of really strange things, like the method of murder. Since we're up on a high-rise, this is a big fancy hotel that borders the sea, because remember, we're in Japan, so the sea could be anywhere. Well, that sounded really dumb, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of ocean view to be had in Japan. It was that, being that the hotel faces the ocean, he was thrown out of a window, like from the dining room, from the top floor, thrown out of a window to hit the concrete several floors below, but the glass was on the inside. Like, so somebody broke in through this fancy stained glass window, you know, somehow incapacitated the hotel owner and then threw him out the window. So at first we were like, well, did he just did he jump, or did a storm blow in, or do we know it was murder? So we're all sitting there at breakfast, at basically a murder scene, so we can like notice the details while we're having breakfast, I guess. So they had moved the table to one side, and being that Tiberius has claws on his hands, he looks over and tries to determine whether what kind of weapon was used to incapacitate the guy, because he was a perfectly, he wasn't an old man, he was a perfectly healthy, middle-aged guy, built fine, well-fed, he wasn't weak or sickly. Somebody like manhandled this guy out a window after jumping in through the window. It's like, whoever did this has the capacity to fly? I don't know. So immediately our two dragons are suspects, because I don't trust our DM not to recruit one of the players, because both of the guys playing dragons have very little sense of roleplay. So, hey, you want to be the bad guy for this game? They'd be like, yeah, heck yeah. And, not even worry about telling us their origin stories. So, the two dragons, the biker guy who's the sister of the maid, are suspects. Or maybe the scientist. We're starting to suspect each other. So it's great to ratchet up the paranoia, because clearly the players are not beyond suspicion, according to the police officer lady. So we decide that we're going to stick together so nobody runs off and gets murdered themselves. So we're looking at the dining room while we're sitting there eating, next to this murder scene. And Tiberius, like I said, having claws on his hand, tried to determine what kind of weapon was used to incapacitate him, because we really didn't see somebody just running up and decking the guy in the face and then throwing him out the window. It wouldn't work that way. So, Tiberius makes his roll, and he's like, what was it? Based on the blood spatter, what was it? And they go, it was, and the DM tells me it was a bladed weapon, a large bladed weapon, at least like 10 or 12 inches. And I was like, okay, well then, Tiberius kind of like, he's got his oatmeal, he's looking over at the dragons to see if they're big enough to have like 12-inch claws, and they don't. But you rake far enough, you can make it seem that way. So, we look down while they're exhuming or not exhuming, but examining the body. He's got these big fucking lacerations on his chest, like something just attacked him straight on. So I was like, is that a sword? Is that a machete? It's like we look, from the third story window. We look to see, is this like a hand, like a set of claws like Tiberius, or is this does it have a back claw like a dragon? We can't really tell from that high, and we're not allowed to go down and actually examine the body while the body is still there, because we're not police officers. And we go, okay, how about, is there anything else? Is there any, is there any evidence, any items left behind? And they go, well, we're not sure. Why don't you guys examine the hotel while we maintain the crime scenes, because if we couldn't help the police, there wouldn't be any reason for us to be there. They'd shuffle us out into prison cells. But, this is a game, so we're allowed to help the police. So we go looking through the hotel. We split into groups, groups of at least 3, because, we don't want one of us to turn out to be the murderer and then, just kill the other person and run back. So I get paired up with, obviously I have Beano, so that's 2. I get paired up with the dragon that likes to eat children, of course. So, I have to constantly watch him, and Beano has to constantly be at my side, because that's Tiberius's main weakness, is he has to take care of his son. Because, Beano is the last in his line of family members, and once Tiberius retires, Beano will inherit the empire, the company or whatever that he runs, that basically spans the globe. So Beano is basically like a merchant prince at this point, and he's going to inherit, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of company stuff. So Tiberius has to watch over him constantly, and we get paired up with the dragon that likes to eat children because everybody else thought it would be funny. So while we're running around, opening doors, we question the maids, we find out more about them. Like, we find out the shy maid was Mary. Yeah, we find out that Mary was dating her boss, which is a big no-no, but he was getting ready to retire and passed the hotel off to one of the other maids, and that makes her a suspect. And she was the super serious maid that, you know, she's got like the black hair and the raven eyes, and you know, you've seen that character in several animes. She's very serious about her job, and she does it really well. She's almost militaristic, so she's got a motive to kill the guy. Maybe she wants the hotel right now. She doesn't want to wait for the hotel owner and the maid to elope and, you know, run off into retirement. So we go and we're like, okay, so we've got like 5 suspects now. We've got the shy maid's brother, we've got the serious maid, we've got the dragons, we've got Tiberius, kind of, because, you know, he's got the claws. And, you know, we've got all these different people that have all different reasons, you know, all different, the maid has motivation, but we don't see her carrying around a meat cleaver, you know, so we're trying to figure out how did this work exactly. That, and she's like this dainty little, you know, barely 5 foot tall. We didn't see her manhandling this guy out of a window, much less breaking the window inward, so we're trying to figure this out. And Tiberius, being a businessman, decides that he's going to go and check out the hotel owner's office. Maybe he left like documents or something incriminating, or maybe he had enemies that were leaving him notes or something. So Tiberius and Bino and the dragon go off to examine the office, and they find, you know, the big desk and the high-backed chair and a filing cabinet. And we sift through the filing cabinet and we find a will that says, I leave all of my, from the hotel owner, it says, I leave all of my possessions to so-and-so, the, what was it? Who did he leave them to? I'm sorry, I forgot that really important detail. I leave all of my possessions to so-and-so, the really shy maid, Mary. And then we look in the wastebasket and we find another will that says, I leave all of my such and such, you know, stocks and possessions to the serious maid. So now both of the maids are kind of suspect, and we think maybe the serious, like, angry maid lady did it because she was suddenly left out of the will when the hotel owner fell in love with the shy maid and was, you know, writing all of his stuff and updating his things, that he had left everything to her instead of, you know, the raven-haired maid. And we thought, oh my God, you know, maybe that's what it was, that she killed him because he left her out of the will. And then we go, no, because the old will is right there in the trash, and the new will has clearly been filed away nicely, and she's a maid, so she's got keys to everything. She could have just pulled the new will and gotten rid of it, and then just, like, made a copy of the old one, and so she would have still gotten the hotel and all the stuff that was in it, so not really that. So we're starting to get, like, intermixing stories, and we're trying to figure out, you know, who's got... She had the motivation, but not the reason. Or she had the motivation, but, like, not the very basic reasoning. Like, if you killed somebody for leaving you out of the will and you had a copy of the old will, it would have been really easy for her to just replace it and then get rid of the new will entirely. And Tiberius, like, compares the handwriting to make sure it's the same, and it is. So, you know, the will was recently redone to include Mary as the beneficiary for all of his stuff. And we thought, alright, how's team number 2 doing? So over with team number 2, we've got the gangster, the 3 high school gangsters and the mad scientist and the other dragon are running around in the kitchen. Why the kitchen? I don't know. They were probably looking for, like, the murder weapon, you know, because Professor Engage, you know, can whip out a blue light or whatever it is that lets you see blood after it's, like, sprayed a chemical, and then you can cast a UV light over it and it makes blood glow. So they were doing that on, like, all the knives, on all the cleavers, you know, anything sharp that was in the kitchen that may have been, you know, just put back where it was. and they find out that there's a secret passageway behind the refrigerator. And they go, behind the refrigerator? How does anybody use that? And, Hannah, the DM, looks up at us and goes, what do you mean? They go, well, it's a big, big boxy hotel refrigerator. These, and the maids are like 5 feet tall, unless they have like super anime strength that we don't know about. How do they like manhandle this giant fridge to use the secret passage? And they look at the floor, they think, oh, maybe there's a switch somewhere. And they look at the floor, but there's no skid marks on the tile. So to get to this secret passage, you have to move the refrigerator every time and then move it back, because Professor Engage scanned around for unusual machinery and couldn't find any. So he, the 3 high school guys and the dragon get the get the entire refrigerator and move it to the middle of the floor so they can go through this secret passage. And they go and they come and they get us, and we show them the 2 wills, and we're conspiring amongst ourselves, who would have done this and why, and if the maid had done it, she would have replaced the wills, and if the shy maid had done it, maybe it's her, maybe her shyness is all an act, or maybe it really is one of the dragons and we're just on a wild goose chase. And we kind of glare at the guys playing dragons. So we decide we're going to follow this secret passage, because a hotel that's got a secret passage is extra cool. So we move the refrigerator and we regroup and we go down. And it's like a bunch of spiraling stairs, and it goes down, 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 down. And we find ourselves in a little, not really a wine cellar, but something similar. And it has a weight puzzle in it. And if I forget what movie it is, but there's a weight puzzle that involved a bomb that you had to get 4 liters into a 5-liter container, and there were several other containers that were for water. So you could put X number of liters in there and make it exactly 4 liters. If it's any more than that, the bomb would go off. But this puzzle was to open the door. So we had a 5-liter container and a bunch of other containers, and we ended up using a 2-liter container to just put it in there twice, and we got the door to open after we had moved it to the correct location. So it was basically a slider and weight puzzle. So we got this side door to open, even though there were wine casks and other stuff aging down there. And it's basically their herb and wine cellar kind of thing, but there was also a puzzle in there. So obviously there were more rooms, right? So this side door opens and we kind of all file out, and we find ourselves way below the hotel, facing the ocean. If we were on a sheer cliff, it was like a shelf emerged out of this cave onto a shelf, and there was a bench there. And we look around and we're like, what is this? We're looking at the waves, and we could see the sun. That's probably where the sun sets or rises, one of the two. And it probably rises, land of the rising sun. But we go, why is there a bench down here? And we find a locket that's from the hotel owner to Mary, the shy maid. It's got this nice little, I'll love you always kind of thing. It's got his picture and her picture. And we go, okay, we're starting to string this together and figure out that, yeah, they were actually pretty serious. And I think there was a bouquet of flowers or something else there that, it's starting to hint that, it's probably not Mary, because they were so in love. They were getting ready to run away together. So, why would she just kill him to get the hotel and all of his possessions? So we're starting to wonder, okay, who does that leave? That leaves the really angry raven-haired maid. It leaves the dragons. It leaves the brother. It leaves, it leaves 4 other people. So we're going back, and on our way back through the passage, we find washed up on the rocks, we find a white leather glove and a kitchen knife, a big 12-inch not a meat cleaver, but like the you know, you've got a block of knives. It's the biggest one that you would never fucking use for anything, you know. So we find a white leather glove and a meat cleaver. And like, okay, who's clever enough to remember to use a leather glove, because it's got like blood all over it. So he clearly, whoever it was, pulled on this glove and then killed the guy, and you know, pulled it off and then threw it down in the secret passage, and or threw it into the ocean or whatever, and it washed up on shore near the secret passage, which is a stroke of freaking luck, but it was, you know, DM planted. So we're like, who do we know that wears leather? And we kind of stared at each other for a second. We're like, oh, it's Mary's brother, because he was wearing like a white leather jacket, and he always had one of his hands in his pockets, and he was always like posturing around, and he could like kick really high and stuff like that. And I was like, what if he like not jumped his bike, but like jumped himself, because he had really great jumping abilities that, you know, whether he was on his motorcycle or not, he could put like jumping 5 onto himself. He could have jumped into the window, grabbed him, stabbed him, and then like thrown him back out, because he's a motorcycle athlete. It's like, well, I could definitely see that, because we don't, you know, none of the other people other than the players are really like superhuman. What if it was Mary's brother, because he was so disapproving of her running away with him? And we go, holy crap, we have to go talk to him and see his other hand, because he's always like posturing with one hand in his jacket. And we go, okay, you know, where's his motorcycle? Maybe he left him there. So we go out, you know, with the police chief following us, this lady, God, she follows us out, and we find his motorcycle parked next to the hotel, and it's got his helmet on it, it's got his white like tasseled jacket next to it, and we turn the helmet over, because that's where you keep your gloves to keep them from getting rained on or whatever. We turn the helmet over, we only find one glove, and we're like, oh, he did do it. He did do it. Where is he? He's still in the hotel. So we all like gang rush inside to find this guy, because we know he's the one who murdered him. And we find him in the dining room, like minding his own business, but he's got like one hand in his jeans pockets and the other hand like awkwardly on his hip, so he looks really weird standing there like that. And we show him the glove, and we show him the knife, and we show him, you know, the will, and we've got the police chief lady, so we're laying it all out on the dining room table like we're playing Clue or something. It was Mary's brother in the dining room with the butcher knife. So it's like, yes, we're gonna make an accusation. It was Mary's brother in the dining room with the kitchen knife. So we accuse him, and he freaks out, and he gets ready to like leap out the window, but of course 2 of our party members can fly, so they jump out right after him. And since, you know, he has to obey gravity and the dragons don't, they swoop and they grab him and they bring him back in. And the police chief and her like goons like jump on the guy and arrest him. And of course Mary's in the background going, no, why would you do such a thing? It's like, you deserve better, you should never date your boss. So, you know, completely unrepentant, but we solve the murder. So, you know, we get our thanks from the police, and we get ready to head out. You know, now that the murder's solved, we're free to go. So the high school punks steal the super awesome motorcycle that was left out from the bad guy, because they took him away in the squad car. So this like hyper advanced souped up motorcycle is sitting in the front yard, and he goes, we steal it. So all 3 of these high school punks jump on this motorcycle and ride off into the sunset. And you know, Professor Engage gets on like a hover disc, and he flies on away through the city. And of course Tiberius and Bino have their own limousine, so they drive off in their limousine. I assume the dragons flew away, I don't know. So it wasn't really our responsibility what happened to the hotel, but we did solve the murder mystery. So I guess Mary, the shy maid, inherited the hotel from her lover, and the raven-haired maid still works there. She's still kind of gur-faced, but she wasn't bad. She was just unpleasant. So we solved the murder. We saved our own reputations. We found out, you know, what happened, and it was a fairly simple game. I mean, the white glove was the dead giveaway, but we had to actually put all the pieces together and figure it out. So it was a really fun game. I had a lot of fun. It didn't have to be like pulse-pounding action the whole time, or you know, battles to save the world. It was a hotel murder mystery. It was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. So that is the end of that particular D&D story. So until next time, keep gaming.